Maria Rodriguez had been working at the military airfield for 3 years, but the other ground crew members still treated her like she didn't belong. Every morning she arrived early with her cleaning supplies, ready to maintain the aircraft that protected their country. The Apache helicopter was her favorite assignment, though she'd never admit it to anyone. The massive machine sat in the hangar like a sleeping giant, its dark metal surface reflecting the fluorescent lights above. Maria approached it with the same respect she'd show a cathedral. She understood that this wasn't just a machine. It was someone's lifeline, someone's way home. "Look at her go," sneered Jake, one of the mechanics, as he watched Maria carefully wiping down the Apache's nose. "Acting like she's polishing the crown jewels or something?" His buddy Mike laughed loudly, making sure Maria could hear. "Maybe she thinks if she cleans it good enough, they'll let her fly it." "Dream on, cleaning lady." The other workers joined in the laughter, but Maria kept her focus on her work. She had learned long ago that responding to their jokes only made things worse. Instead, she methodically cleaned each surface, checking for any signs of damage or wear that might affect the helicopter's performance. "I bet she doesn't even know what half these parts do," Jake continued, walking closer to where Maria was working. "Hey Maria, can you tell me what this is?" He pointed to a random component, grinning at his friends. Maria looked up briefly, her dark eyes steady. "That's the chin turret assembly housing," she said quietly, then returned to her work. "It contains the 30mm chain gun and the FLIR targeting system." The men's laughter died down a bit. They hadn't expected her to know that, but Jake wasn't ready to give up. "Lucky guess," he muttered. Maria continued her work in silence, but inside she felt the familiar sting of their dismissal. She had grown up in a military family. Her father had been a helicopter pilot, and her brother was currently serving overseas. She knew more about aircraft than most of the mechanics making fun of her, but her job title was maintenance cleaner, so that's all they saw. As she worked around the Apache's tail section, Maria noticed something that made her pause. There, partially hidden under a layer of dust and grime, was an insignia she hadn't seen before. It looked like it had been painted over, but years of weather and use had worn away the covering paint, revealing what lay beneath. The insignia was small but distinctive, a silver eagle with spread wings. Perched above, crossed sabers with 3 stars positioned above it. Maria had seen this symbol before, in her father's old military books. Her heart began to race as she realized what she was looking at. This wasn't just any Apache helicopter. This was something special, something with a history that the current crew clearly didn't know about. The worn insignia told a story of missions flown and battles fought, of a crew that had earned the highest honors their country could give. Maria glanced around the hangar. The mechanics were back to their own work, having moved on from taunting her to discussing weekend plans. None of them had noticed what she'd discovered. They probably wouldn't care even if they did, but Maria cared. She understood the significance of what she was seeing. This helicopter had been flown by someone extraordinary, someone who had earned decorations that most pilots could only dream of. The fact that the insignia had been painted over suggested that whoever had flown this Apache had moved on to other duties, perhaps classified ones. She carefully cleaned around the symbol, making sure not to damage it further. As more of the paint wore away under her gentle ministrations, additional details became visible. Below the main insignia, she could make out partial letters of what looked like a call sign or unit designation. The discovery changed everything for Maria. This wasn't just another aircraft to clean. It was a piece of history, a monument to someone's service and sacrifice. She found herself working with even greater care, treating each surface with the reverence it deserved. As the morning wore on, other personnel moved through the hangar, but no one paid attention to Maria or her work. She was invisible to them, just part of the background like the tools and equipment scattered around the space. But Maria didn't mind being invisible anymore. She had found something that made her work meaningful in a way the others couldn't understand. The Apache seemed different now that she knew its secret. It felt alive, as if the spirit of its former pilot still lingered in the cockpit. Maria imagined what it must have been like to fly this machine in combat, to trust your life and the lives of others to its systems and weapons. She thought about her brother, currently deployed in a dangerous region, probably flying missions in an aircraft just like this one. Maybe someone like her was taking care of his helicopter, making sure it was clean and ready. making sure nothing was overlooked that could put him in danger. The thought gave her work new purpose. Every surface she cleaned, every component she inspected, every detail she attended to could mean the difference between life and death for the pilot who would take this Apache into the sky. The mechanics could laugh at her all they wanted, but she knew the truth about what she was doing. The next few days brought more of the same treatment from the ground crew, but Maria noticed she was starting to care less about their comments. Her discovery of the hidden insignia had given her a sense of purpose that their mockery couldn't touch. She found herself arriving even earlier, staying later, and paying closer attention to every detail of the Apache's maintenance. "She's getting weirder," Mike observed as he watched Maria carefully inspect the helicopter's rotor blades with a flashlight, even though it was broad daylight. "Look at her acting like she's some kind of expert." "Maybe we should report her to the supervisor," suggested Tom, a newer mechanic who was eager to fit in with the group. "She's spending way too much time on that bird." "It's suspicious," Jake shook his head. "Nah, let her be. At least she's thorough. Better than having someone half-ass the job." Despite his public mockery, Jake had privately noticed that the Apache had never looked better. Maria's attention to detail was actually impressive, though he'd never admit it. Maria overheard their conversation but didn't react. She had more important things to focus on. Over the past 3 days, she had carefully uncovered more of the hidden insignia, and what she found made her hands shake with excitement and disbelief. The call sign was becoming clearer. Ghost Rider. Below it, partially visible numbers suggested this Apache had been part of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, known as the Night Stalkers. These were the elite helicopter pilots who flew the most dangerous missions, often behind enemy lines, supporting Special Forces operations that the public would never hear about. But it was the additional markings that truly took Maria's breath away. Small hash marks along the side of the aircraft, nearly invisible unless you knew where to look. Each mark represented a successful combat mission. Maria counted them twice to be sure. There were 47 marks, 47 combat missions. This Apache and its pilot had seen more action than most crews would experience in multiple deployments. The pilot who had flown this machine was a legend, someone who had repeatedly put their life on the line for their country and their fellow soldiers. Maria's research during her lunch breaks had revealed more about the 160th. So these pilots were selected from the very best, trained to fly in conditions that would ground other aircraft, and tasked with missions that had no room for error. They flew at night in bad weather into hostile territory, and they brought everyone home. The knowledge weighed on her. She was holding a secret that could change how everyone on the base looked at this Apache, but she also understood why the insignia had been painted over. Pilots in special operations units often moved on to classified positions where their previous service couldn't be acknowledged publicly. "Maria," the sharp voice of Sergeant Collins cut through her thoughts. "What's taking you so long with that bird?" "You've been on it for hours." She looked up to see the maintenance supervisor approaching, his expression impatient. Behind him, several of the mechanics were watching, probably hoping she was about to get in trouble. "Sorry, Sergeant," Maria replied, quickly putting away her cleaning supplies. "I found some areas that needed extra attention. I didn't want to leave anything undone." Collins walked around the Apache, inspecting her work. His frown gradually faded as he took in the pristine condition of the aircraft. Every surface gleamed, every component was spotless, and there wasn't a speck of dirt or grease anywhere. "Well," he said finally, "I can't argue with the results. This bird looks better than it has in months. But don't take all day on one aircraft. We have a full squadron to maintain." "Yes, Sergeant," Maria nodded. As Collins walked away, she caught a few of the mechanics looking at the Apache with new appreciation. Maybe they were starting to understand that her work was more than just cleaning. That afternoon, as Maria was finishing up her tasks, she overheard a conversation that made her freeze. Two pilots were discussing flight schedules near the Apache, and one of them mentioned that a new pilot would be taking over this particular aircraft next week. "Command is bringing in someone with extensive combat experience," one pilot was saying. "Apparently, this bird has some history that makes it appropriate for certain types of missions." The other pilot nodded. "I heard rumors about who might be coming in. If it's who I think it is, we're getting one of the best stick and rudder men in the service." "Guy's a living legend," Maria's heart pounded. The new pilot was someone who knew the Apache's history, someone who understood what the hidden insignia meant. But what would happen when they arrived? Would they recognize that someone had been caring for their aircraft with the respect it deserved? More importantly, what would the other ground crew members do when they realized that the cleaning lady they'd been mocking had been maintaining an aircraft with one of the most distinguished service records in the military? As she packed up her supplies that evening, Maria took one last look at the Apache. Tomorrow might bring changes that would alter everything about her job and her relationship with her coworkers. But tonight she felt proud of the work she had done. She had taken care of a piece of history, honored the service of a pilot she had never met, and maintained an aircraft that had served with distinction in the most dangerous missions imaginable. Whether anyone else appreciated it or not, Maria knew she had done something important. The hangar grew quiet as the day shift ended and the night crew took over. In the dim emergency lighting, the Apache sat ready for whatever mission awaited it. And hidden beneath years of paint and bureaucratic anonymity, the insignia of Ghost Rider remained, waiting for the right person to discover its significance. Maria walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Behind her, the Apache waited in the darkness, its secret safe with the one person who understood their true value. Monday morning arrived with an unusual buzz of activity in the hangar. Maria noticed several vehicles she didn't recognize parked outside, and there were more officers present than normal. Something important was happening, but as usual, no one bothered to inform the cleaning crew about operational changes. "Big shot coming in today," Jake mentioned to his friends as they gathered around their tool cart. "Heard it's some hotshot pilot with a chest full of medals. Probably thinks he's better than everyone else." Maria continued her work, but she listened carefully. Her suspicions were confirmed. The new pilot was arriving today, and it was almost certainly the person who had originally flown the Apache she'd been caring for. Around mid-morning, a black SUV pulled up to the hangar entrance. Maria was working on the far side of the Apache, partially hidden from view, when she heard the vehicle doors slam shut. Heavy footsteps echoed across the concrete floor, accompanied by the sound of several people talking in low, serious tones. "That's the bird, Colonel," she heard Sergeant Collins say. "Maintenance has been keeping it in top condition. It's ready for whatever missions you have planned." "Good," came a deep, gravelly voice that Maria didn't recognize. "I want to do a complete inspection before we start flight operations. This aircraft and I have a history together." Maria's hands trembled as she continued cleaning. This was it. The moment she had been both anticipating and dreading. The original pilot was here, back with his Apache. She heard footsteps approaching the aircraft, then stopping. There was a long moment of silence that seemed to stretch forever. "Well, I'll be damned," the voice said quietly. "Someone's been taking real care of this bird. Look at this, Sergeant. When's the last time you've seen an Apache maintained to this standard?" "To be honest, Colonel, it's been looking like this for weeks now. We have a very dedicated member of the maintenance crew who's been assigned to this aircraft." Maria held her breath, not daring to move from her position on the far side of the helicopter. "Dedicated is an understatement," the colonel continued. "Someone's been doing museum-quality work on this machine. Where's this maintenance person? I want to thank them personally." "Well, sir, it's actually our cleaning specialist, Maria Rodriguez. She's around here somewhere." There was another pause, and Maria could practically feel the colonel's surprise through the metal hull of the Apache. "A cleaning specialist did this?" he asked. "This level of care and attention? Sergeant, this aircraft looks better than it did when I flew combat missions in it 5 years ago." Maria's eyes widened. 5 years ago? That would put the colonel's service during some of the most intense combat operations in recent military history. She had been right about the significance of those hash marks. "Maria," Sergeant Collins called out. "Maria Rodriguez, report to the colonel." There was no avoiding it now. Maria set down her cleaning supplies and walked around the Apache's tail boom, her heart hammering in her chest. As she came into view, she saw a tall man in dress uniform, his bearing unmistakably military despite his civilian surroundings. Colonel James "Ghost" Morrison was not what Maria had expected. He was younger than she'd imagined, probably in his early 40s, with graying hair at his temples and intense blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His uniform displayed an impressive array of ribbons and badges, including several Maria recognized as being awarded for extreme valor in combat. But it was his expression that caught her off guard. Instead of the dismissive look she usually received from military personnel, the colonel was studying her with genuine interest and something that looked like respect. "Ma'am," he said, extending his hand. "Colonel Morrison, I understand you've been taking care of my old bird here." Maria shook his hand nervously. "Yes, sir. I try to do my best work on all the aircraft." Morrison smiled. "Ma'am, with all due respect, what you've done here goes way beyond doing your best. This is the kind of care that shows real understanding of what these machines mean. May I ask about your background?" The question surprised Maria. Nobody had ever asked about her background before. "My father was a helicopter pilot, sir, and my brother is currently deployed flying Apaches overseas." The colonel nodded slowly. "That explains it. You know what these birds represent. You understand that they're not just machines, they're someone's ticket home." Behind them, Maria could hear the ground crew talking among themselves. Their usual joking and laughing had stopped, replaced by confused murmurs. They were witnessing something they'd never seen before. A high-ranking officer treating the cleaning lady with respect and appreciation. "Ma'am, I have to ask," Morrison continued, lowering his voice slightly. "In your work on this aircraft, did you notice anything unusual? Any markings or identifications that might have been overlooked?" Maria's pulse quickened. This was the moment of truth. She could pretend she hadn't seen anything, continue to protect the secret she'd discovered, or she could trust this man with what she'd found. She looked into the colonel's eyes and made her decision. "Yes, sir. I found the Ghost Rider insignia and the mission markers." Morrison's expression didn't change, but Maria saw something flash in his eyes. Surprise, appreciation, and perhaps a touch of emotion he quickly suppressed. "I see," he said quietly. "And what did you do with that information?" "I protected it, sir. I made sure the markings were properly preserved during cleaning, and I didn't tell anyone about them." The colonel was quiet for a long moment, studying Maria's face. Around them, the hangar had grown unusually silent, as if everyone sensed that something important was happening but couldn't quite understand what it was. "Ma'am," Morrison finally said, "in 30 years of military service, I've rarely encountered someone who understood the true meaning of duty and honor as clearly as you do. Thank you for taking care of Ghost Rider. Thank you for understanding what she represents." The conversation between Maria and Colonel Morrison had drawn the attention of everyone in the hangar. Jake, Mike, and the other mechanics had stopped pretending to work and were openly staring at the unusual scene unfolding before them. "Ghost Rider," Jake whispered to Mike. "What's he talking about?" Mike shrugged, but his expression had changed from amusement to confusion. The cleaning lady they'd been mocking for months was having what appeared to be a serious, respectful conversation with a full colonel, something none of them had ever experienced. Colonel Morrison stepped closer to the Apache, his hand resting gently on the aircraft's nose. "I flew 47 missions in this bird," he said, his voice carrying across the now silent hangar. "Afghanistan, Iraq, places I can't name. She brought me and my crew home every single time, even when we took fire, even when the odds were against us." He turned to address the assembled ground crew, his voice taking on the authoritative tone of a commanding officer. "This aircraft has one of the most distinguished service records in the military. She's flown missions that saved hundreds of lives, supported operations that kept you and your families safe while you slept. And for the past few months, Ms. Rodriguez here has been caring for her with the respect and attention she deserves." The mechanics shifted uncomfortably. Sergeant Collins looked like he was trying to process what he was hearing. The idea that their cleaning lady had been maintaining a legendary aircraft was difficult for them to accept. "Sir," Collins said hesitantly, "we had no idea about the aircraft's history. The records we received didn't mention any special significance." Morrison nodded. "That's intentional, Sergeant." When aircraft transition from special operations units to regular service, their histories are often classified or simply not discussed. But that doesn't make their service any less important. He walked around the Apache slowly, inspecting Maria's work with the eye of someone who knew every bolt and rivet of the machine. "Ms. Rodriguez, may I ask how you knew to look for the insignia?" Maria felt the weight of everyone's attention on her. For months, these people had treated her as if she were invisible, as if her work didn't matter. Now she was the center of attention, being questioned by a colonel about her methods and knowledge. "My father taught me that every aircraft tells a story if you know how to look," she replied. When I found the edges of paint that didn't match the rest of the surface, I knew something was underneath. I was careful not to damage it while cleaning. And you researched what you found? Yes, sir. I wanted to understand what I was looking at. When I realized what unit the insignia represented, I knew I was working on something special. Morrison turned to face the ground crew, his expression serious. Gentlemen, Ms. Rodriguez has demonstrated something that every person in aviation maintenance should understand. Respect for the aircraft and the people who fly them. She recognized the significance of what she was working on and treated it accordingly. Jake's face had gone red with embarrassment. The woman he'd been mocking for months had known more about the Apache than any of them. She had been doing more than just cleaning. She had been preserving history. Sir, Jake said, stepping forward. We didn't know. Morrison held up a hand to stop him. What you knew or didn't know isn't the issue. The issue is how you treat the people you work with and the responsibility you have to these aircraft. Every helicopter in this hangar represents millions of dollars of equipment and, more importantly, the lives of the crews who fly them. He paused, letting his words sink in. Ms. Rodriguez understood that from day one. She's been treating this Apache like the piece of history it is, while the rest of you saw it as just another machine to maintain. Maria watched the faces of her co-workers change as the full impact of the situation hit them. Tom, the newest mechanic, looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Mike was staring at his boots, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Now, Morrison continued, I want to discuss the future maintenance of this aircraft. Ms. Rodriguez, I'm recommending you for advancement to the Aircraft Maintenance Specialist program. Your attention to detail and understanding of aircraft systems is exactly what we need. Maria's eyes widened in shock. Sir, I don't have the formal training. Training can be provided, Morrison interrupted. What can't be taught is the dedication and respect you've already demonstrated. Sergeant Collins, I want Ms. Rodriguez assigned as the primary maintenance specialist for this Apache. She's earned it. Collins nodded quickly. Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. The colonel turned back to Maria. There's something else. I'm putting together a special maintenance team for some upcoming missions. I need people who understand that these aircraft are more than just machines. Would you be interested? Maria could hardly believe what she was hearing. 3 hours ago, she had been the invisible cleaning lady that everyone ignored. Now a decorated colonel was offering her a position on a special team. Yes, sir, she managed to say. I would be honored. Morrison smiled. The first genuine smile Maria had seen from him. Outstanding. Report to my office tomorrow morning at 800. We have a lot of work to do, and I want people on my team who understand what excellence looks like. As the colonel walked away to speak with other officers, Maria stood beside the Apache, still trying to process what had just happened. The hangar was buzzing with conversation, but it was different now. Instead of the usual jokes and casual banter, people were talking in hushed, serious tones about what they had witnessed. Jake approached her slowly, his earlier arrogance completely gone. Maria, I owe you an apology, we all do. We were wrong about you, and we were wrong to treat you the way we did. Maria nodded, accepting his apology, but not sure what to say in response. The dynamic in the hangar had shifted completely in the span of a single conversation. How did you know all that stuff about the aircraft? Mike asked, genuine curiosity replacing his former mockery. I listened when my father talked about his service, Maria replied. And I read everything I could find about military aviation. I wanted to understand what he had been a part of. The mechanics nodded respectfully. They were beginning to understand that the quiet woman they had dismissed possessed knowledge and experience that could benefit all of them. The next morning, Maria arrived at Colonel Morrison's office exactly at 800, wearing her cleanest uniform and carrying a folder containing her employment records and certificates from aviation maintenance courses she had taken on her own time. Her hands were slightly shaky as she knocked on the door. Enter, came the colonel's voice from inside. The office was Spartanly, decorated but filled with the unmistakable signs of a distinguished military career. Photographs of aircraft and crews lined the walls, along with commendations and unit citations. Maria recognized several locations from her brother's deployment stories. Ms. Rodriguez, please have a seat, Morrison said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. I've been reviewing your personnel file, and I have to say I'm impressed by what I found. Maria sat down carefully, wondering what could possibly be impressive about her file. She was a cleaning specialist with 3 years of service and no formal aircraft maintenance training. You've completed 6 online aviation maintenance courses on your own time, Morrison continued, holding up a stack of certificates. You have perfect attendance, no disciplinary actions, and according to Sergeant Collins's reports, you consistently exceed standards in all your duties. Why haven't you applied for advancement before now? The question caught Maria off guard. She had never thought anyone would notice her extra training or care about her work ethic. Sir, I didn't think anyone would take me seriously. I'm just the cleaning lady. Morrison set down the papers and leaned back in his chair. Ms. Rodriguez, there's something you need to understand. In the military, and especially in aviation, there's no such thing as just anything. Every job matters. Every person matters. The pilot depends on the mechanic depends on the parts specialist, and everyone depends on the people who maintain the aircraft between missions. He stood up and walked to a photograph on the wall showing him with his crew in front of the Apache. The reason Ghost Rider and I survived 47 combat missions wasn't just because of my flying skills. It was because of dozens of people who did their jobs with excellence, maintainers, armorers, fuel handlers, and yes, the people who kept the aircraft clean and inspected every surface for potential problems. Maria studied the photograph. Morrison looked younger, and there was an intensity in his eyes that spoke of the dangers he had faced. Standing beside him were 3 other crew members, all looking confident despite the hostile environment visible in the background. That's Chief Warrant Officer Martinez, my co-pilot, Morrison said, noticing her attention. Sergeant First Class Johnson, our crew chief, and Staff Sergeant Williams, our door gunner. We were a team, but we were part of a much larger team that included everyone who touched our aircraft. He returned to his desk and pulled out a thick folder. I've been authorized to establish a special maintenance unit for high-priority missions. I need people who understand that attention to detail can mean the difference between success and failure, between coming home and not coming home. Maria felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The opportunity was beyond anything she had imagined, but the responsibility was enormous. The missions we'll be supporting are classified, but I can tell you they're important. The aircraft we maintain will be carrying special operations, teams into dangerous situations where mechanical failure isn't just inconvenient, it's potentially catastrophic. Morrison opened the folder and began laying out documents. I'm offering you a position as an aircraft maintenance specialist with my unit. The training will be intensive. 6 months of advanced courses followed by specialized instruction in combat aircraft maintenance. You'll be working with some of the best maintainers in the military. Maria looked at the papers, trying to process what she was seeing. Training schedules, course descriptions, security clearance applications, all with her name on them. Sir, I don't understand why you're choosing me for this. There must be qualified maintainers with years more experience who would be better candidates. Morrison smiled. Ms. Rodriguez, experience is valuable, but it's not everything. What I saw yesterday was someone who cared enough about their work to research the history of the aircraft they were maintaining, someone who treated a machine with the respect it deserved, not because anyone was watching, but because it was the right thing to do. He leaned forward, his expression serious. I've worked with a lot of maintainers over the years. Some were technically proficient but didn't understand the bigger picture. Others cared deeply but lacked the skills. You've demonstrated both the caring and the intellectual curiosity that makes for exceptional maintenance personnel. The door opened, and Sergeant Collins entered after a brief knock. Sir, you asked me to bring the maintenance reports? Yes, Sergeant. Ms. Rodriguez, Sergeant Collins has something to show you. Collins placed a folder on the desk and opened it. These are the inspection reports for all the aircraft in our squadron over the past 3 months. Notice anything interesting? Maria looked at the reports, scanning the data. After a moment, she saw it. The Apache she had been assigned to had significantly fewer maintenance issues than any other aircraft in the squadron. 0 unscheduled maintenance actions, Collins continued. 0 safety write-ups. 0 component failures. In 3 months of operations, that bird has been the most reliable aircraft we have. Morrison nodded. That's not coincidence. Ms. Rodriguez, that's the result of someone who pays attention, who cares about details, who treats every inspection like lives depend on it, which they do. Maria felt a swell of pride mixed with the weight of responsibility. She had known her work was important, but seeing the statistical proof of its impact was overwhelming. There's one more thing, Morrison said, pulling out a final document. This unit comes with a security clearance upgrade and a significant increase in pay grade. But more importantly, It comes with the knowledge that your work will be directly supporting missions that protect American lives and interests. He slid the papers across the desk to her. I need an answer by Friday. If you accept, you'll start training next month. If you decline, there's no shame in that. It's a big commitment, and not everyone is cut out for this level of responsibility. Maria looked at the documents, then at the photograph of Morrison and his crew. These were people who had trusted their lives to the aircraft she had been maintaining. Now she was being asked to take on that responsibility for future missions and future crews. Sir, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I don't need until Friday. I accept. Word of Maria's promotion spread through the base faster than she expected. When she returned to the hangar that afternoon, the atmosphere was completely different from what she had known for the past 3 years. People who had never acknowledged her existence were now greeting her respectfully, asking about her new assignment. Jake approached her as she was gathering her personal items from her old locker. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by something that looked like genuine humility. Maria, I wanted to talk to you, he said, glancing around to make sure they had some privacy. About the way we treated you. There's no excuse for it. Maria paused in her packing. She had been dreading this conversation, unsure how to handle the sudden change and how people were treating her. We thought we knew better, Jake continued. We saw your job title and made assumptions about what you knew, what you were capable of. We were wrong and we were jerks about it. Jake, you don't need to. No, I do need to, he interrupted. You were doing important work that mattered, and we made fun of you for it. Meanwhile, you knew more about that Apache than any of us. You were taking care of a piece of history and we were too stupid to see it. Maria closed her locker and turned to face him. For months, she had imagined what it would feel like to have this conversation. To see the people who had dismissed her realize they had been wrong, but now that it was happening, she felt no satisfaction, only sadness for the time that had been wasted. Jake, we all make mistakes, she said. What matters is learning from them. He nodded gratefully. Is there anything we can do? Any way to make up for how we acted? Maria thought for a moment. Actually, there is. Colonel Morrison told me that Ghost Rider, that Apache, has been selected for some special missions. I won't be the only one working on her anymore. When the other maintainers start working on that aircraft, help them understand what they're working on. Make sure they know the history. I will, Jake promised. And Maria? Congratulations on the promotion. You earned it. As Jake walked away, Maria reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just 2 days. She was about to embark on training that would transform her from a cleaning specialist into a specialized aircraft maintainer, working on classified missions. The responsibility was both thrilling and terrifying. Colonel Morrison appeared at her elbow, having approached so quietly she hadn't noticed him. Ms. Rodriguez, walk with me. They left the hangar and stepped outside into the afternoon sunshine. In the distance, helicopters were conducting training flights, their rotors creating a rhythmic thumping that Maria had come to associate with purpose and mission. I wanted to talk to you about what's coming, Morrison said as they walked. The training you'll be undergoing is challenging. It's designed to push you to your limits and beyond. Some people don't make it through. Maria nodded, having expected this conversation. Sir, I understand it won't be easy. It's not just about the technical knowledge, though that's important. It's about developing the mindset that lives depend on your work. In regular maintenance, if you miss something, the aircraft might be grounded for repairs. In special operations maintenance, if you miss something, people die. They paused near a memorial wall that honored fallen aviators. Morrison stopped in front of one particular name, his expression growing somber. Staff Sergeant Williams, he said quietly. My door gunner from Ghost Rider. We lost him 2 years ago, not in combat, but in a training accident. Mechanical failure on a different aircraft. The investigation found that a critical component hadn't been properly inspected during routine maintenance. Maria felt a chill run down her spine. The weight of responsibility Morrison was describing became suddenly, terrifyingly real. I'm not telling you this to scare you, Morrison continued. I'm telling you because I need you to understand what excellence means in this job. It's not about doing good work or even great work. It's about doing perfect work every single time because anything less can cost lives. He turned to face her directly. Based on what I've seen of your work on Ghost Rider, I believe you already understand this at some level. But the training will take that understanding and make it absolute. You'll learn to inspect components that most people can't even see. You'll memorize technical manuals for systems so complex that they require teams of engineers to design. And you'll do it all while knowing that lives hang in the balance. Maria looked at the memorial wall, reading the names of pilots and crew members who had given their lives in service to their country. Among them, she noticed, were several maintainers and support personnel. Their sacrifice was equal to that of the aircrew they supported. "Sir, may I ask you something?" Maria said. "Of course, why me? Really. I know you explained about my work ethic and attention to detail, but there have to be other people with those qualities who also have more experience." Morrison was quiet for a long moment, watching a formation of helicopters in the distance. "Do you remember what you said yesterday about protecting the insignia you found?" "Yes, sir. You could have ignored it. You could have painted over it completely, or reported it to your supervisor and let someone else deal with it. Instead, you researched it, understood its significance, and took personal responsibility for preserving it. You did that not because anyone asked you to, not because it was in your job description, but because it was the right thing to do." He paused, then continued. "That level of personal integrity and responsibility is rare, Ms. Rodriguez. Technical skills can be taught. Equipment operation can be learned. But the kind of character that drives someone to do the right thing when no one is watching, that can't be taught. Either you have it or you don't." Maria felt the full weight of his words. She was being selected not just for her technical potential, but for who she was as a person. "The missions our unit will support are unlike anything in regular military service," Morrison explained. "We'll be maintaining aircraft that carry Navy SEALs behind enemy lines, that extract wounded soldiers from hostile territory, that support operations so classified that most of the military will never know they happened. The margin for error is 0. He pulled a small card from his pocket and handed it to her. "This is the contact information for Chief Warrant Officer Martinez, my former co-pilot. She's now running the maintenance training program you'll be entering. Call her tonight. She'll explain what to expect and help you prepare." Maria took the card, noting the name she remembered from the photograph in Morrison's office. "There's one more thing," Morrison said. "Your security clearance investigation will begin next week. They'll interview people from your past, examine your financial records, talk to your family and friends. It's intrusive and sometimes uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Do you have any concerns about that process?" "No, sir," Maria replied. "I have nothing to hide." Morrison smiled. "I didn't think you did. Ms. Rodriguez, I want you to understand something. What happened yesterday with Ghost Rider and the insignia you discovered, that wasn't an accident. I requested that specific aircraft be assigned to this base because I knew eventually I'd be returning to it. I wanted to see how it was being cared for." Maria's eyes widened in surprise. "I've been watching the maintenance reports for months," Morrison continued. "When I saw the improvement in that aircraft's reliability, I knew someone special was taking care of her. I just didn't know who until yesterday. The revelation that her work had been noticed long before the dramatic confrontation in the hangar was both humbling and validating. She had been doing important work without knowing anyone cared, and that work had led to this opportunity. Report to Chief Martinez Monday morning at 600, Morrison said. Your training begins immediately. And Ms. Rodriguez, welcome to the team. 6 months later, Maria stood in the same hangar where her transformation had begun, but everything was different now. She wore the uniform of a certified aircraft maintenance specialist, with the distinctive patch of Colonel Morrison's Special Operations Unit on her sleeve. Her hands, once rough from cleaning chemicals, now bore the calluses of someone who worked with precision tools and complex mechanical systems. Ghost Rider sat in the center of the hangar, but she was no longer the only Apache receiving Maria's attention. 3 other aircraft surrounded her, all bearing the subtle modifications that marked them as special operations platforms. Maria moved between them with confidence, supervising a team of maintainers who looked to her for guidance and expertise. The training had been everything Colonel Morrison had promised and more. 18-hour days studying technical manuals, hands-on practice with systems so complex they required computer-assisted diagnostics, and constant testing that pushed her to her mental and physical limits. Of the 12 people who had started the program with her, only 7 had completed it successfully. Chief Warrant Officer Martinez had been a demanding instructor, but also a mentor who understood what it meant to transition from support personnel to technical specialist. She had pushed Maria harder than anyone else, not out of cruelty, but because she recognized the potential that Colonel Morrison had seen. "Rodriguez," came a familiar voice from across the hangar. Maria looked up to see Morrison approaching, dressed in flight gear and carrying his helmet. "How's the bird looking?" "All systems green, Colonel," Maria replied, setting down her diagnostic tablet. "Pre-flight inspection completed. All maintenance actions verified. Ghost Rider is ready for whatever mission you have planned." Morrison nodded, running his hand along the Apache's nose the same way he had 6 months ago. But now the gesture held different meaning. It was the touch of a pilot who trusted completely in the work that had been done on his aircraft. "The mission tonight is a big one," he said quietly. "Extraction of a downed aircrew behind enemy lines. Weather's going to be bad, terrain is hostile, and the enemy knows we're coming. It's exactly the kind of mission Ghost Rider was built for." Maria felt the familiar mixture of pride and anxiety that came with sending aircraft into harm's way. Every bolt she had tightened, every system she had tested, every component she had inspected would be put to the ultimate test in a few hours. "Sir," she said, "I've triple-checked everything. Engine performance is optimal, weapon systems are fully functional, and all avionics are operating within specifications. She'll bring you home." Morrison smiled, the expression of a pilot who had complete confidence in his maintainer. "I know she will, Rodriguez. You've never let me down." As Morrison walked toward the aircraft to begin his own pre-flight inspection, Maria reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. The woman who had once been mocked for caring too much about a cleaning job was now responsible for maintaining some of the most advanced aircraft in the military. Jake approached from across the hangar, now wearing the stripes of a junior maintenance supervisor. His attitude toward Maria had undergone a complete transformation, and he had become one of her most reliable team members. "Maria," he said, using the informal address that had become common among the Special Operations maintenance crew. "The fuel samples are clean and the weapons load is complete. We're ready for final inspection." "Thanks, Jake. How are the new guys working out?" Maria asked, referring to 2 mechanics who had recently been assigned to their unit. "They're learning," Jake replied. "Having some trouble adjusting to our standards, but they'll get there. I've been telling them about the Ghost Rider insignia and what this aircraft represents. I think it's helping them understand why we do things the way we do." Maria nodded approvingly. One of the things she had insisted on when she became team leader was that every new maintainer learn the history of the aircraft they worked on. Understanding the legacy helped them appreciate the responsibility. Across the hangar, she could see Morrison completing his inspection of Ghost Rider. His movements were precise and methodical, the routine of a pilot who trusted his maintainers but never delegated the final responsibility for flight safety. "Rodriguez," Morrison called out, "join me for a moment." Maria walked over to where Morrison stood beside the Apache's cockpit. The interior was filled with advanced avionics and weapons controls, systems that represented millions of dollars of technology and years of development. "In about an hour, I'm going to take this aircraft into a combat zone," Morrison said. "I'm going to trust my life and the lives of my crew to the work you and your team have done. More importantly, I'm going to trust the lives of the aircrew we're extracting to the reliability of this machine." He paused, looking at Maria with an expression of complete seriousness. "I want you to know that there's no one in the military I'd rather have maintaining my aircraft. Your attention to detail, your dedication to excellence, and your understanding of what this job really means have made you one of the finest maintainers I've ever worked with." Maria felt a surge of emotion at the praise. 6 months ago, she had been invisible, her work unnoticed and unappreciated. Now she was being trusted with responsibilities that most people could barely comprehend. "Sir, it's been an honor working on Ghost Rider and learning from you," she replied. "Bring everyone home safely." Morrison climbed into the cockpit and began his startup procedures. The Apache's engines spooled up with a whine that built to a roar, and the massive rotor blades began to turn. Maria and her team moved to their positions around the aircraft, performing the final checks that would clear Ghost Rider for takeoff. As the Apache lifted off and disappeared into the night sky, Maria stood watching until the sound of its rotors faded into the distance. Somewhere out there, people were depending on the work she had done, trusting their lives to her skill and dedication. She thought back to that morning months ago when the other mechanics had laughed at her for cleaning the Apache with such care. They had mocked her for treating a machine like it mattered, for caring about details that seemed insignificant to them. But she had been right to care. Every surface she had cleaned, every component she had inspected, every hour she had spent learning about the aircraft's history had been preparation for this moment. She had been training for this responsibility long before she knew it existed. As Maria walked back toward the hangar, she passed the memorial wall where Colonel Morrison had shown her Staff Sergeant Williams's name. She paused for a moment, reading the names of the fallen and thinking about the responsibility they all shared. Her radio crackled to life with Morrison's voice. Ghost Rider is feet dry, all systems nominal. Thanks to the maintenance crew for outstanding work. Maria smiled and keyed her radio. Copy, Ghost Rider. We'll be here when you get back. She had found her calling, her purpose, her place in something larger than herself. And she had found it by simply caring enough to do her job with excellence even when no one was watching.